The Chaser Report is recorded on Gadigal land.
Striving for mediocrity in a world of excellence. This is the Chaser Report.
Hello and welcome to the Chaser Report with Dom and Charles.
Hello, Charles. It's a very big day today in Australian politics, and it's a sad moment, really, for all Australians, but particularly satirists. Scott Morrison is giving his farewell speech today.
I never thought it would happen, Dom. I thought Scott Morrison would be the gift that kept on giving.
I know. Don't cry, Charles. Don't cry. Particularly because it seemed as though he couldn't get another job. But PwC didn't want to hire him. I didn't think anyone was going to hire him. But his AUKUS submarines came in at last, and a lot faster than the actual submarines will come in, I think, as well.
But is there ever going to be someone who's foolish in Australian politics ever again? Dom,
Calm yourself,
will there
Charles.
ever be an arrogant narcissist?
Calm yourself, my old friend.
Dog.
Barnaby Joyce isn't going anywhere. He's just on leave.
Thank God.
He's just on leave
thank
because
God.
of the planter incident.
Right. Okay, so we've still got Barnaby.
Barnaby's... I honestly don't know where Barnaby would go. Oh, presumably to Gina Reinhardt. At some point, that's going to happen.
Presumably to hospital at some point.
Well, I don't want to cast aspersions on people's medical conditions.
Have you seen his blood pressure?
I think he's acknowledged there's some work to be done. We could all think of some paths he could take. I just hope that the planter box is okay. Nobody in all of this has inquired about the mental well-being of the planter box, having been fallen off, sat on and then fallen off. It's always the little people, Charles.
Yes, and also that planter box didn't ask for that publicity.
No.
They've been sort of put into the spotlight without any regard, like no consent.
No,
there.
all those photographs that were taken, a plaque was installed. How's the planter box going to live it down?
Yes. No, it's not. It's going to be forever the planter box that tripped over Barnaby Joyce.
Won't somebody think of the shrubs, Charles? Well, we are.
Yeah.
All right, in today's episode, we'll preview a little bit of what Scott Morrison might say in his speech today. By the time you hear this, it will have been delivered, but we'll analyse it in tomorrow's episode.
But we'll be making some bold predictions
We'll make some predictions.
Presumably be completely wrong.
More after this. So Scott Morrison's final appearance in Parliament today, and I like what he had to say ahead of it. On the eve, he gave an interview to 9 newspapers, to James Massola, and he said, do you know which Prime Minister he'd most like to emulate as a role model for the ex-PM?
Billy McMahon. That'd be my guess.
Harold Holt? I don't know. Look, isn't the most fun ex-Prime Minister to be Paul Keating? Who,
Paul Keating would be...
has just dropped bombs.
Yeah, that's right.
Just give no fucks. There aren't many good role models. I don't know how I feel about Malcolm Turnbull doing Q&A again this week. Like, I know that he did that back when he wanted everyone to sort of rise up and make him Prime Minister. I don't think it's going to happen again just quietly.
Yeah, no, I think you got to go quietly into the night after you've been a Prime Minister.
Well, that's what Scott Morrison is wanting to do. Interestingly, his role model as an ex-PM is Julia Gillard, of all people.
Right.
He says it's widely respected the way that she conducted herself post-Prime Ministership, whatever view people have of the Prime Ministership itself.
Yeah, so and then that makes sense. So I'm assuming what will happen is Scott Morrison will now become the UN ambassador for women.
Yes,
which
he'll
I think
be concerned with girls' education and go and make the world a better place. Literacy.
And become a sort of outspoken, feminist for global feminist development.
Charles, he's already an outspoken feminist.
He
was
Minister for Women.
He does.
He was Minister for Women, wasn't he? Or was that Abbott?
That was Tony Abbott. I actually looked into this week, and it's actually not true. Just to be clear, it's always said Tony Abbott was Minister for Women, and I looked this up, and he wasn't. He actually abolished the position of Minister for Women, like formally speaking.
Right.
There was one, and then there wasn't, and he just said, "I'll be a Prime Minister for Women."
Oh, that's right. He was the Prime Minister for Women.
He was promising to do something about it. You won't need a Ministry for Women because you've got me.
Right. Yes.
So what will Scott Morrison do today? I think he will claim a heroic victory with God's help over COVID.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Look, I think there'll be a lot of God in there.
Oh,
I'm not sure.
God's in all that he does.
Yeah. I think he'll skirt around the pandemic a little bit, won't he? Like he'll sort of and then there was a pandemic.
There was a battle against COVID, and thanks to God, I was able to lead Australia confidently and successfully through it. Also, there were some vaccines. Anyway, maybe it's the vaccine thing he'll skip over. But in terms of his accomplishment, he's going to talk about AUKUS, isn't he? Because that's the one thing he's been able to cash in on to finally get a
Yes.
job.
Yes, and the thing is, just this week, there's been reports out of the US that it is increasingly unlikely that AUKUS will never happen. There was actually, if you listen to the amazingly good podcast Global Roaming with Geraldine Doog and Hamish McDonald, they had a whole thing on it where they were interviewing this American expert who went, the whole problem is, so I think the submarines are called Polaris, is that right?
I'm not sure.
The Polaris
Probably.
submarines? Yeah.
Do you mean the ones we're eventually getting or the ones we're getting in the meantime?
No, the ones that we're eventually getting, I think.
So my understanding is that we get American ones in the meantime, but in
Right,
the fullness
okay,
of time we
yeah.
get the British ones, which I think were potentially the Polaris ones, yes.
Yeah, right. No, so no. I think the Polaris ones are the ones that we will.
The ones we're supposed to get in the long term. So we get the Virginia submarines. I'm just looking at this. We
Right,
get the US Virginia ones as soon as the early 2030s, as what the Royal Australian Navy website says. But then we'll get the British ones later.
Yeah. So the Virginia ones, right? That's right. So there are currently, I think, 43 Virginia class submarines in America operational. Right. They need minimum 60. Like their Congress has gone, we need minimum 60. They've slowed down production on the Virginia, right?
Of course.
So the idea that they'll ever get to the point where it's now Australia's turn to have a Virginia submarine is just... It's not going to be 2030s. It's not even going to be 2040s.
Well, the Congress has already been...
2050s.
You're very negative about AUKUS for this reason.
Yeah.
But Charles...
And the only way we'll get them before then is if there's a little clause in the contract which is like, you don't really own this. Like, it'll be like, you can borrow this and you can train your people up, but if ever we need it anywhere in the world, you got to give it back.
But isn't that, just being cynical here, isn't that what you want? Isn't it not a bad thing? I mean, yes, okay. If America...
What? You want to... Okay, Dom, I'll tell you what.
America
I'll sell
puts
you...
No, but America has a submarine base on Australian soil.
I'll sell you my car. Pay top dollar for it. But if ever I need it, I get to just get it back.
But Charles,
from you.
Wouldn't a better deal for me be if you owned your car, you left it at my place indefinitely so that I could use it, and then we said that if... And I didn't pay you any money... And then I said
you got to pay me money. No, you got to pay me.
No, I'm not going to.
You got to pay
yours.
me $368 billion.
You can have a base.
No, this is the thing.
You can have a base at my place. This is what I think will happen. I'm going to call it now. We'll never pay them for the subs. They'll just base them out of Australia, and everyone will be happy.
No, we've already got the money. Like,
we'll be a
we're
garrison.
already shoveling the money across.
We'll just be a lovely outpost and a garrison, and that's why they're not going to defend us because they like Australia.
But it's all about the money. They want the money without giving us the subs. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's going to be the exact opposite of that. It's going to be like all that thing that you described. Like, there'll be a base here, and it'll be basically run by the Americans.
Yeah.
But in addition to that, we have to give them money for not owning anything.
Charles, it's a protection racket. Of course, we're going to pay for our protection.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
But Charles, isn't this... Yep. I mean, when he speaks about AUKUS later today, isn't this going to be basically the ultimate ScoMo deal? Because I hadn't heard until now that it's likely that the subs will never arrive at all. But that's what makes it the classic ScoMo. It's a vast...
Yes, it's the vaccine.
It's a massive...
It's not a race.
Expenditure
it's
of
not
money.
A race.
It's a car park. It's the most expensive car park ever produced. It's a lot of money.
Yes.
It's a big, ambitious project with an uncertain timeline that will literally never happen.
Yes. It's a car park. Oh.
And this is what he's going to do in post-political life, is structure amazing deals that sound fantastic but never materialise.
And I love the fact that during a literal arms race where the whole world is ploughing money into building more arms. Like Europe has started to actually supercharge their rearmament.
China, of course, is
Russia,
building a
China,
vast amount of arms.
Iran's going crazy. Everyone is just building. Australia, it's not a race.
It's not a race.
It's not a race. It's not a race.
But we have a solution.
In this arms race.
What I love most of all is if you're going to make up a scheme for the future that costs a crazy amount of billions of dollars, wouldn't you make something that sounds amazing? Rather than a British submarine, if we can choose all hypothetical technologies.
Yes.
I want the one that Britain designs. They're known for their amazing submarine engineering.
You'd choose the French submarine in that scenario
you would.
Anyway, because at least it'd be stylish.
I'd rather a Peugeot than a Range Rover, absolutely.
Yes. No, exactly. And you get all like leather seats and it'd be all...
and a certain je ne sais
special.
quoi.
and some candelabras.
Plus,
I don't
the
know.
French are quite good at building infrastructure projects. I don't know if you've noticed. They're quite good at train lines and things like that.
Yeah,
Hey,
yeah.
more on this in a moment.
The Chaser Report. Less news, more often.
You know, though, Charles, if we were rethinking the deal, if we were going to pull out of AUKUS, dismantle the major piece of Scott Morrison's legacy, and look for a country
Yes.
that could build us a high-tech submarine quickly, isn't the answer obvious? Shouldn't we get the submarines
Australia?
from China?
Oh,
Yeah,
from China.
would make us an amazing submarine, and they'd have it there by
Yes.
next week.
That's right. That's true. And they've got a bit of an economic slump. They need to sort of supercharge.
It could
their-
be electric. BYD
economy.
could build us a submarine in no time.
BYD.
Could build your dreams.
Well, build your destroyer.
Build your destroyer. And Charles, if we bought submarines from China, would China want to attack their own submarines in future? Wouldn't this be a win-win?
No. Or they would, but they'd know all the weaknesses and they would have booby trapped.
They'd have a sort of remote
Like, you know,
deactivate.
Yeah. Like I reckon you'd think that America probably does that as well, don't you? Like
Have
if
a
you're
remote
selling
control.
high-tech, yeah, just have a little. I don't know.
Well, there's a black box we're not allowed to touch, right, in these nuclear submarines. Like the nuclear processing thing is so effective. Like it lasts for decades off the one
Yeah.
nuclear power source, but they can put anything in that box.
Yeah.
I
It's
want
like a-
I want one for my car. I want a nuclear powered car that I never have to refuel. Wouldn't that be fantastic?
Yeah. What if you crashed it? Like what?
Well, I wouldn't be alive. It wouldn't matter. There'd be some fallout.
Yeah, neither would the
Just some minor radiation.
There'd be no eyewitnesses.
But also, given that they've
You know, you
described
wouldn't
it,
have to-
it's a black box, Charles. Don't black boxes survive anything through some sort of magic of technology? We've avoided talking about
okay.
Scott Morrison's time as prime
Okay, so
minister.
no, but let's just get back on to Scott Morrison. So he'll talk about God. I reckon we're talking at least 30 or 40 mentions of the word God
Yes.
in his speech.
Jen and the girls.
Yeah,
Once,
you're right.
Once tops.
AUKUS. Do you reckon he'll mention Hawaii? What's your betting on
Ooh.
that? I reckon 1,000 to 1.
Well, I hope he inadvertently mentions it by mentioning
Yeah.
the ukulele. By just saying, I'm going to spend some more time with my ukulele, which is the most
Yeah.
ironic instrument for him to play.
Do you reckon Jenny and the girls will be mentioned more or less than God? Like which one will be first?
Oh, less.
Jenny or
Less.
God? Less than God.
I think Jen and the girls will get at most one. I reckon Taylor Swift will get more mentions than Jen and the girls and Curry. There'll be a lot
really?
more mentions.
No, but no. You obviously haven't seen Nemesis episode 3.
I haven't.
He talks about Jenny and the girls the whole time. Even when he's responding to the point about how he shouldn't have mentioned Jenny and the girls in relation to the Brittany Higgins scandal, he then sort of goes, well, I think that was a bit of a bad call. And I think Jenny would agree.
Oh, so
Like,
Jen and the girls
literally.
told him. Jen and the girls told him
Yeah,
that
yeah.
they shouldn't have mentioned Jen and the girls.
It
That's
shouldn't have
fantastic.
been.
Well,
Clumsily.
Maybe it would be better if rather than Scott Morrison giving his farewell speech today, Jen and the girls got up and did. And they've
Yes.
clearly got better political antennae than ScoMo, don't they?
Yes, I think that's right. We get Jenny and the girls up. They can talk about, well, they can just talk about the story that's never been told, which
Yes.
is what did they get up to in Hawaii? Was it an enjoyable trip? Nobody ever asked him that. It was all like anger.
Was it worth it?
Anger. Oh, you shouldn't have been there. Was it worth it? Like, did they?
I want his
actually,
travel
you know-
tips. I want to know if you're
Yes.
escaping your workplace responsibilities in Hawaii,
Yes.
what hotel do you go to?
Yeah.
What's the
How
best
to-
beach?
how to
I
have
think
a
he was
gui-
at Waikiki Beach, wasn't he?
how to have a guilt-free, holiday during, an intense work period. I'd love to know that.
I think that's what I want to know. Yes, is how to shirk your responsibilities, and that part I'm quite good at. But it's how to do it without crippling guilt, and just
Yes.
front up the next day as though you've been doing a fabulous job all along, and it wasn't
Yeah.
as though you didn't turn up. That's what I
I
want.
mean, it really is. It is worth watching Nemesis episode 3. I know we've covered it in the podcast before, but just for the footage of people refusing to shake his hands when he came home.
Oh yeah, that was pretty.
There's
amazing.
one clip that I'd never seen before of this guy who clearly, Morrison grabs his hands and then he just looks so fucking pissed off and he just stands up and just exits the screen. And it's like, oh,
Was that Malcolm Turnbull?
I think it was just the front bench.
Just the front bench, yeah. Just before we stop predicting the Morrison exit speech, what about the multiple roles? Is he going to defend that, or is he going to gloss over it?
Oh no, I think he won't even mention it. Why would you mention it? Because he sort of he speaks entirely in the passive voice.
Things happened
Nemesis
to him.
About
yeah,
that.
he wasn't responsible.
Yeah, it's things like there were regrets.
The passive diminished responsibility. I imagine what will happen is that he'll give a long speech. The speaker will gently remind the member for Cook that it's time to stop. And he'll override the speaker because it'll turn out he's actually also the speaker.
He's actually the speaker. Yes, that's right.
He's been getting the speaker's salary all this time.
Yeah, and then it'll turn out that he's also sworn himself in as the Prime Minister and the Governor General, and there'll be a coup this afternoon.
Well, that would certainly be entertaining. I don't know, and I'm saying this with respect and affection for the man. I'm not entirely sure how successfully Scott Morrison would organise a coup. I think it's
it'd be the
least
car
likely.
park of coups. Yeah, it'd be the.
Well, my fellow
he'd
Australians,
try and build one
at some future point. I will seize power. We're working on the details, but it's going to be big. Just stay tuned. Possibly in the early 2030s. It's going to happen.
That's right. Yeah. It's going to be delivered.
You know, the one thing we won't be asking, Charles, once he finally leaves. Where the bloody hell are you?
No, we will not. We will definitely not.
And the answer will be away. It always is.
Our gear is from Road. We're part of the Iconoclast Network.
Well, one more thing before everyone goes. Please leave us some Apple podcast reviews. We haven't had any for ages. 5 stars, please, and then get stuck in as much as you like.
Oh, and we got some suggestions by text about Chaser annual front cover.
Oh, good.
We'll go through them tomorrow as well.
Sounds good. Thank you, Charles. See you then.
Okay, see you, bye.